If there's a theme to the twisted ramblings of Toasting the Classics, it's that while today seems crazy, the 60s and 70s were even crazier. Tom Wolfe's novel, and I'm not so sure it is one, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test is a snapshot of those hectic times. A tale written in the meter of the beat poets by a conservative journalist, this book just barely conceals its judgment of the counterculture. Wolfe followed Ken Kesey, Neal Cassady, and a cast of characters with names like Mountain Girl on a psychedelic bus and acid trip. Somehow, these merry pranksters found themselves at the epicenter of the growing hippie movement before it was ruined by that pesky Charlie Manson. We heard that the brown acid was a bad idea, so we mixed up some vodka and Kool-Aid for our discussion of this purported classic. It's time for episode 97 of Toasting the Classics, the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. Welcome to Toasting the Classics, podcast where we take something that people call a classic and we talk about it while we drink something inspired by the classic. In this case, we are doing the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. Did I get all those words right?
I think so.
That is by Tom Wolfe. My name's Dave McArthur.
And my name is Dr. Professor Clint Lanier.
I really need some more accolades.
Actually, you could start using, is it JD, right? JD and
I could use Esquire. Esquire is pretty dope. I believe in
What
Esquire.
does LLP mean?
LLP is a limited. It's a practice. It's a incorporation. LLC is usually what people do, or PLC.
Corporation. So that's a partnership. LLP would be a partnership.
LLP is a partnership, right?
Okay, I always see that like
limited liability partnership, right?
After some law firm or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, welcome back. Yeah. So we're doing
Electric
Kool-Aid Acid Test by Thomas Wolfe.
Yep.
So whose pick was this?
This is my pick. I had book, and I totally forgot the connections between this book and a bunch of other stuff we read.
Right.
And was both pleasantly surprised by that, but also I was thinking, like, I didn't mean to go deeper.
Had you ever read this thing before? This tome before?
Nope. Never read this. I read The Right Stuff.
Okay.
And I just, not that long ago, read Bonfire of the Vanities. And I thought those were great. I love both of those books. So I thought we would try this. We learned about it. I think you had mentioned it during On the Road.
Maybe.
Because we had talked about the Merry Pranksters a little bit.
Well, we talked about Cassady, right? And then where he ended up at.
Where he ended up, exactly.
But is dead by
I completely
a railroad
forgot.
track in
I
Mexico.
completely forgot that connection. And when I read the book, I was like, is that Neal Cassady? Like the Neal Cassady?
Yeah. He would show up in all these things.
I know.
He's in everybody's book. Why don't you do the honors? What are we drinking?
So we're drinking, as you could probably guess, a Kool-Aid concoction.
Yeah.
Fruit punch concoction.
We're drinking not an acid Kool-Aid, but a vodka Kool-Aid.
Well, actually, one of them is going to be laced with acid, and I'm going to switch them around a couple of times and not tell you which one.
I'd like to thank you for springing for the good vodka.
Yeah. Well, it was a gas station.
Well, I think two things about this vodka. It says Crystal and Palace on it. Palace means it must be really good. You can serve it at a Palace. It's clear as crystal. Mm-hmm. Smells like crap. Clear as crystal.
Can vodka smell bad?
It can. It can smell terrible. You've
me
never
see.
smelled bad vodka?
I don't drink vodka.
Yeah.
That's not true. I have Russian family, so I do drink vodka when I'm with them. But
that one doesn't smell. There's some that smell really, really bad. It
smells like alcohol.
Yeah, well, that one will. Rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so that's what we're drinking now. So pour the wine.
you.
Hey, mister. This is our...
Spill the wine. Dig that, girl.
This is our Kool-Aid right here, which is fruit punch.
Which is fruit punch.
Yeah, close enough.
7-Eleven brand fruit punch. I am traveling, so my groceries are limited. I don't think we need to explain again what vodka is to the people, do we?
No, I hope not.
I think we've been through this a couple of times.
We're actually in the same studio again.
Yeah, we are. That's probably the thing we really should take note of.
So we're in a proper podcast studio.
This is the first time I've been in the physical presence of the greatness that is Clint Lanier for 2 years.
Thank you. God, has it been 2 years?
Tell me when.
When?
Go to the top. Okay.
Yeah. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
We're using red Solo cups.
Red Solo cups.
Here's to you, Toby.
You've seen movies. You've seen teen movies.
Absolutely.
Right? You know what that is? I think that's going to need a little more Kool-Aid on top of it.
Yeah, I got to drink it down a little bit. But Electric Acid Kool-Aid. No, wait.
The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. Yes. Right.
Thomas Wolfe. I knew nothing about it. So how much
I was going to ask if you had read this. So
how much did you know about it?
I didn't know anything. We had talked about all of the facts about Tom Wolfe wrote this book. This book was about Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey was hooked up with Neal Cassady. We mentioned all that stuff before.
Not only that, but we mentioned Hunter S. Thompson, Thomas Wolfe, Gonzo journalism.
Right. So we've done so many different things that connected to this.
We danced around this.
But when I picked this up, I was just like completely surprised as to what it was or what was
all the
going
connections.
On. All the connections were brand new again.
It was like 1,000 points of light, all kind of coming together in this book. Did you like the book? Let's just start there.
Did I like the book? I think that's what we're going to be talking about over the next
Okay.
45 minutes or
Well,
so.
let's back up then and do you want to give a summary? Do you want to try to give a summary?
Yeah, I could give it. Yeah, I could give a
Okay.
summary. So it's basically the story of Ken Kesey, who at this point has already been a successful author with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He has already written Sometimes a Great Notion, I think, or it's in the process of coming out because there's a few times where they're talking about the editing process.
Well, they go there for the
They're going
party,
for
the
right.
The publishing party thing.
Right. So he's a famous author at the time, and he never really did much after that in terms of really popular.
I think he wrote a couple of other books. I think he wrote one but he waited until like the 80s. So his first two, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was sort of, he says, Sometimes a Great Notion was his opus.
Yeah,
he's
I think
known,
he does, yeah.
but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest just took off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediately became a screenplay. Well, it became a bestseller. Then immediately a screenplay, and then in the 70s it must have been early 70s. It was turned into the movie with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, I think it's 1971.
Yeah, it was real early.
It's one of the three movies in history that swept the top 5 Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress.
Was it actress or supporting?
Director and screenplay.
Who directed that?
That's a good question.
Was it Kubrick?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just The Shining. He's on the same brain cell, so I'm thinking it's The Shining, but I don't think it is.
The other one
Kubrick.
I'm thinking of is Chinatown, but he's in France
That's
by now.
Roman Polanski. Yeah, he's probably.
He's in France by now.
Well, it's right around the time of the Manson murder, right?
That would have been 69.
That this film came. Oh, that was in 69?
Yeah,
oh, okay. I thought it was in 70 or 71. Okay, I've lost track.
We can talk. We'll come back to that because again,
I think Manson's in the background of this.
Yes,
like
crazy connections.
Yeah,
crazy
definitely.
connections. So, all right. So basically, it's
not just Manson, but also Jim Jones.
Right.
I think is in the background of this to
I think
a
so.
weird extent. So
let me try to give finish this summary. So you've got King Kesey.
Right.
So Kesey is a famous author by now. Kesey, after he wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, let me back up a little bit further. In order to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he started working, and not in order to write it, but he wrote it while working as a night shift intern at a mental asylum.
Okay.
And at the mental asylum, he was asked if he wanted to take part in these drug tests.
Oh, right.
Being run by Stanford or UC Berkeley.
And was Timothy O'Leary? Timothy Leary involved with it?
No, Leary wasn't involved in this, but we'll get back to who was. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, why not? It was one of the other interns said, hey, you can make some money doing this. And he's like, yeah, why not? And so they gave him all kinds of drugs. They gave him speed, they gave him benzos, and they gave him acid, right? Yep. And so the routine was they would give him these drugs, and Wolfe talks about this in the book sort of as a backstory. They give him this drug, and then they would come in and find out what the reaction is. Mm-hmm. For all kinds of stuff. They'd ask him all kinds of crazy questions and so forth. That turned him on to the world of drugs. He was never really into them before that, especially acid. Man, he's like, this is good stuff. This is really cool. And he
some people just have that drug they're looking for their whole lives, and the second they try
this
it,
was his. Yeah. Poof, he changed. It was like a switch. He became a different person. He started not a different person, but he tuned in, turned on. You know. And
he was on the bus.
He was on the bus, and the hippie movement hadn't hit until really 67 was like the big push. But he was a predecessor to the hippie movement. Got a band of other acid people around him. They called themselves the Merry Pranksters. This is about 64, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was much later.
No. It was 64, 65.
Oh.
Is about when all this happened.
I got a little confused by things then because I thought it was 68.
Nope.
Maybe that's when the book came out.
Yeah, the book came out in 68.
I think I had that number in the back of my head, so it was confusing me about the chronology sometimes.
So Wolfe, so Wolfe starts out with Kesey getting out of jail after all of this had happened, and then starts telling you the backstory,
right?
Which started at about 64. In 64, you find out that he starts more and more hanging out with all of these people that were sort of eccentric, eclectic. They're artists. They're This is the end of the beatnik era. So the beatnik era on the road, 58.
Did you see the things where he was talking about being too young to be a beatnik, too old to be a hippie? He's written, and that's I identify that because everybody's always talking about these great big cultural debates with generations today, and I'm always like, I'm just barely the end of Gen X, and I get them, but I get the millennials too because I kind of have some of their traits as well. Like,
God, I hope none of the bad ones.
Well, they're all bad and good on either side, right?
Kesey really gets heavy into acid, and he decides. I mean, look, we're talking about at this time, he's a novelist. He's in his late 20s. He's got a bestseller. He's got a lot of money for the time, you know.
I wondered how much money.
You could say $30,000, and that's a lot of money for the time.
Yeah,
you know,
he was. I think he said he spent $60,000 on funding.
Yeah, funding this whole thing. Yeah.
But I was thinking, how much money could he have possibly made off those books? I mean, it's only 2 books
and a screenplay because he's getting royalties on the screenplay.
But the screenplays,
or not the screenplay, the play.
Okay,
because there's a Broadway play.
There is a Broadway play.
So he's getting royalties off of that too. Plus the bestseller. Plus he has an advance. He'll have an advance on Sometimes a Great Notion from his publisher. That's just sort of how it works.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so the guy's got a lot of money. He's not out of his 20s yet. He decides that what he and his friends should do, because they're all into acid, and they're dropping all the time.
Really into acid.
Really into it. So he buys an old bus, a 1930-something bus.
It's probably something to get out of the way here is to say that I have never tried acid. Okay. And I've never even hung out with people who are on it. So this is one of the few things that I have no personal knowledge to bring to the table.
I was hoping you did because I haven't either.
No. I mean, I'm curious. I have been around people who
You've been very sick and hallucinated before, right?
No, but I have been around people who tried mushrooms. Okay. So I have seen that several times.
Yeah, mushrooms, same here. But definitely, not acid. Mm-mm. They're really into acid. And
I think acid was on its way out when we were kids. Like it was definitely, there were still people in high school. I knew people who talked about it, but it was not the drug of choice, and it was already starting to be phased out, I think,
we can come back to
the mid-'90s.
Because I don't know where it's at now. But anyway, so he takes this long road trip across the U.S. It's really annoying at times. I mean, because Wolfe is writing as if he's there, and he's writing from the perspective of the people that are tripping.
Right.
And so he would say, trip, ping or something like that. He goes on this weird thing. You're like, come on, flip a page, flip a page, flip a page. Okay,
did you read the poems?
We're back to prose.
Did you read the
tried to. God, they were annoying.
They're really annoying.
And we're going to get to the writing in a minute. So they go on this road trip, come back. They're all doing acid. It was this big experience. I'm really abbreviating it.
Sure.
He gets back.
It's a rambling road trip.
He gets and
everybody's on acid.
He gets busted for pot of all things, which is really funny. Because I didn't realize. Well, that was the thing.
Acid's not illegal
until 66.
Isn't that crazy?
Until 66.
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
So
you're right. So that makes the chronology make a lot more sense. Right.
So they get back in 65,
and they're not talking about Vietnam.
Not at all.
I don't think it came up
not
once.
At all.
So clearly, it's not 1969.
No, they are talking about Vietnam because the protests. Remember?
He mentions that towards the end, but he's talking about that, saying that there's another group of people that are into the protest. Oh no, he's talking about the Berkeley people. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
So that was like 66 when that happened. So he gets busted for pot. This is about 65.
He runs off to Mexico.
Takes off to Mexico.
Does a half-assed job of pretending to kill himself, and then runs down to Mexico and hides there for a little while.
Yeah, he gets another stoner to try to, hey, go fake my suicide for me. He gets a stoner to do that.
Long enough that
that's the best story in the book. Is the stoner has a panel van the plan is you're going to wreck this panel van into a tree by a cliff, throw my boots down by the ocean, and then plant a suicide note in the wrecked panel van. Okay. Right. So the stoner doesn't quite make it up the hill. Has to get a tow truck to get him up to the top of the hill. Can't quite wreck it because how is he going to get the tow truck to wreck it? Throws the boots and throws them in the ocean, so they're gone. So it's like, so nobody noticed the stupid panel truck up by the cliff.
For days.
I would say he did a half-assed job in Mexico too. But he's tripping through Mexico. During all of this, he's doing what's called acid tests. Kesey's decided that his mission is to turn everybody on to acid. And so he throws these big parties, and that he calls them acid tests. He comes up with the idea, and it's brilliant, that what we need to do is we need to put everybody into a dark room, put black lights everywhere, put weird strobe lights and lasers.
Day-glow
stuff, and weird music. And so they'll trip with this multimedia experience. So he's the first one to do that, and everybody's freaking out. So what happens, though, is he essentially starts the entire acid movement in Haight-Ashbury. Everything else sort of comes up as a result. I don't know if it's true or not, if it was more organic, but Wolfe sort of makes it seem like he started the acid movement. That's sort of how Wolfe talks about it.
It seems like it was around. My question in general is how much of the hippie movement and what we associated with it is because of these people, because a lot of their look and their iconography and the drug seems to be what we think of as being
the Day-Glow
hippie
stuff,
movement.
Like they came up with the Day-Glow, and then it kind of transformed into it. But
right. The day glow, that's like what's on the side of the mystery machine, right?
Yeah.
That's day glow.
It's hot pink,
Okay. Yeah.
neon yellow and all that stuff. That's day glow. So they would, paint all their accoutrements that. They'd dress up in crazy costumes.
Mm-hmm.
He had a blessed saint of a wife that put up with all this crap for all these years, made the costumes.
Him knocking some
in
woman up.
agreement, knocking some 18-year-old up, and he's like, 30.
I mean, that's what's going to happen.
I don't know how you
find
find one of those women that would agree to that, but whatever. I'm not saying that that's what I want out of life, but I'm curious.
Yeah, there sounded like a little bit of rue and regret.
I would like to just talk to somebody that would. Okay, you allow your husband to do that? So that's the gist of all of it. It ends with him just sort of riding off into the sunset and
cult leaders. Cult leaders are always
and leading a private life of. He led a quiet life.
Oh, he chilled out a lot.
Yeah,
more.
he chilled. He chilled. He went back to
Yeah.
he went back to Oregon. He's from Oregon. Went back to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Chilled out. Lived the rest of his life. He taught at University of Oregon. And
Do you know who raised the little girl?
yes, Jerry Garcia.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
That's another There's like 5 or 6 of these gigantic figures of the 60s that hover around
I
this
know
story.
this whole thing. The Grateful Dead are a big part of it because so we're all over the
We're
place.
jumping all over
ladies
the
and
place.
gentlemen.
It's almost like
yeah.
Tom Wolfe's writing in this
Yeah,
book.
I know. It is almost stream of consciousness.
I was so I don't know. I'm not going to land necessarily on whether I like this book yet, but the style of the writing was a disappointment to me because I've read his stuff.
Yeah.
He's a great, just almost like journalistic type writer. He's very clear.
So-
he tells a good narrative. He makes more of a narrative out of this than maybe some people would have.
Yeah.
It's not full William S. Burroughs just
Right.
throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, but I had a little trouble following the narrative because of those passages you're talking about
Yeah.
where suddenly we're on acid when we're
We're
writing.
all over the place. Yeah.
And I don't think he did acid,
No, he didn't.
and I don't think he was there.
He wasn't
almost
there.
any of these activities.
So that was really a question I have. So I'm a nonfiction author. I've never written fiction before.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anybody will see anyway. I'm in the middle of a book right now, and I'm really careful. I'm trying my best not to intuit into things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding source material. I'm backing it up. I'm finding old newspaper, whatever. He spent 5 days with the Merry Pranksters,
Okay.
interviewing them. And then he went and interviewed other people. Like there's this character named Sandy. He interviewed him in New York. He interviewed a lot of sources for this book, but it was well after the fact.
That's what he's good at. He's a good, like I said, like journalistic type writer.
Right.
He's
Well, that's
really
what he
good
did.
at pulling together
Because
facts.
he was with the New York. Let's say it was Washington Post, and then New Yorker, I believe. He was with one of those really kind of highfalutin intellectual type of in the 70s and 80s for sure. I mean, he was known as a premier writer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
But my question is this: would you prefer Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or this book, style-wise?
It's a really good question because they are close together. I have this impression of Tom Wolfe's writing in this book that he's doing Kerouac and he's doing Burroughs. He's like doing an impression of their writing. Whereas Hunter S. Thompson, that sounds like Hunter S. Thompson's genuine voice.
Well, the difference is Hunter S. Thompson that was his point of view. Because he's the one dropping acid and doing everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it also it's his voice.
And
I know
he's
how
like walking across the floor and there are eels everywhere.
Right, but
we got to get rid of these damn eels.
As you say it, you're kind of doing his
right,
accent, right?
Yeah,
because
that's right.
it's very much his voice when he writes, and you know how he talks, and you get
Actually,
a
I'm doing Johnny Depp doing him. Is what I'm doing.
right,
Yeah. right.
No, but it's with this, I didn't quite get into the voice the same way because it didn't feel as authentic.
Right.
It felt like he was writing in the style of fill in the blank.
I guess what he did, like there were some annoying people. There was this guy that said right all the time, and he was really Babs, I think was his name. He was really annoying, and I think what he would do is he would like.
Was he the one that would try to pick a fight with, like, say something obnoxious and get people? Or I can't remember the names. I know Mountain Girl.
He was like the second in command that sort of took over for a while.
Yeah, I think that's Babs.
That's Babs.
Right.
I think what happened is, so he interviewed these people for a few days, and then he essentially made them that. Whatever he saw at them there, that's where they were in the bus.
Right.
So he
extrapolated from those couple of days to that's what their character.
That's their personality, right? They may have been fried. I mean that. So there's a character in here, folks, that his name's Sandy, who doesn't do as well with acid as everybody else. He freaks out. He thinks everybody's out to get him, and he starts to become really paranoid about everything. And he hangs with them all the way through Mexico, but eventually he splits. Oh, actually, he doesn't. No, he goes to jail. His brother has to bail him out of jail and send him to an insane asylum for treatment for like months to unwrap him.
Okay.
From everything that happened.
That happens when they're in Mexico?
No, that happened during the Unitarian church thing.
Right.
That guy like freaks out.
I remember the Unitarians showing
the
up.
cops end up getting him. Kesey's like, oh, we got to get him back on the bus. And the guy's brother comes down from New York, and his brother's totally sober, and he's looking at him in jail, and the guy's freaking out and everything. And Kesey's like, yeah, we got to get him out, get him back on the bus. And the brother looks at him, he's like, what the F? What are you talking about? The guy's
That's the last place.
Yeah, the guy needs help, dude. The thing is, we're talking about this book really enthusiastically. It was an annoying book.
As a cultural phenomenon, I don't hate it. It's really just the prose that I had trouble with. I really didn't. It was an interesting read.
Well, let's talk about the cultural phenomenon because we sort of teased it. So what are all the connections here? Let's talk about all the different connections.
Well, the connection is, okay, so you've got Ken Kesey and you've got Cassidy.
Yes.
So now you're connected to Allen Ginsberg, who actually appears in the book,
So this is
and to Kerouac.
So you've got Kesey as this bridge between beatnik and hippies, right? Because Cassidy, and there's a moment where they meet, where they're in New York at the publishing party or whatever for Kesey's new book, and Kerouac's there because Cassidy's there, I guess.
Right.
And I think Ginsberg might have been there.
It seemed like Kerouac was kind of looking down.
Yeah, they're kind of cold, right?
Yeah. Well, he was already a famous person. I think.
Well, Kerouac's kind of like, oh yeah, you're standing on my shoulders, type of thing. Like I started this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think he did feel that way.
and then Kesey was like, he thought there'd be more camaraderie.
Right.
Right. So Kesey's this bridge between them. So there's that connection, right? You've got the whole beatnik connection. So
he's a bridge between lots of people.
Yeah. So
he is age-wise is what he's talking about,
Yeah.
but also just because he's a charismatic person,
right?
He can form a link with like the Hells Angels and the hippies and like
which is another thing, right?
Different groups of people that. So yeah, that's and also just kind of charming the cops out of getting them in trouble over and over again. Which a big part of that is that acid is not technically illegal, but they're doing so many other illegal things that. In the first part of the book, I was like, how are they not getting arrested? And then they explain it a little bit. They have sort of a routine that they run on the cops, which is just to overwhelm them and confuse them.
The cops are like, "What are you doing? Stop it! Leave me alone! Okay, go get out of here!"
I had one time I was driving my friend's car. We came back from New York. He was at law school already, and we were driving back, and his taillights were completely out. And we got back into Virginia. So we're driving along. We get pulled over for the taillight, and the cop is talking to us, and he's like, "Wait, so it's your car, but your friend's driving?" And I could tell he didn't know who was liable.
Right.
He was confused by it for a second.
Yeah.
And then he looks in the back seat and he's like, "Are those your law books?" to my friend. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm in law school." And the guy was like, "All right, have a good day." Like, it's just not
even gonna worry about it.
I don't know what's going on.
Get out of here.
Some more connections. Well, the bus, right?
Yeah,
the bus opens up a whole bunch. And I think it's the original one. The original bus, the original Magic Bus, because the Magic Bus is in the Magical Mystery Tour, obviously,
which he mentions,
which probably is directly inspired by this.
Bet it
because
is,
they were actually around each other. But there's also the bus from the Muppet movie.
Yes,
is just a parody of this.
Yes,
like now when I was reading the book and I saw the picture on the cover of the book, I was like, oh, that's the Muppets. That's the Electric Mayhem Band, and it's called the Electric Mayhem Band. It's definitely based on this.
Well, you can't tell me that what's his name, Jim Henson, wasn't a head, like
I don't know. He's pretty old.
Acid head.
He's older than these guys. He was
Jim
born
Henson?
about 1930.
Jim Henson?
Yeah, I think so. He's a lot older than most of these people. Maybe
Did you
not.
look that up?
No, I'm just off the top of my head. I think he was born about 1930.
I got to fact check him on air.
But I could be wrong about it. But he was old enough. So he started on TV in D.C. doing Kermit as like a sock puppet.
Yeah.
And my dad was a little kid watching that on TV. So I know he's about at least 10 years older than my dad. So I would guess he was born in the early 30s.
He was born the same year as Kesey.
Which is?
1936.
1936, okay. So it's a little bit later than I thought. But like 10 years older than my dad, basically. That's usually when I'm trying to understand the past, I try to figure out how old my dad would have been at that time, and then I can start figuring out
That's a good way to do it.
What's going on from there. And in my personal life, it's who won the World Series that year. Okay, so that was 2003, and then I can figure out what else was happening.
When did I get married? Okay, the Braves were no.
Literally, I've had that thought before.
Yeah,
I was thinking the other day, how long ago did my friend Sam get married? And I was like, well, it was Game 3 of the 2004 ALCS, so it must have been
So you got the bus. That's the other connection.
Yeah, and the Mystery Machine, and Scooby Doo.
Yeah, Mystery Machine.
There's a little bit of the DNA of this and that too. Yeah. So. That's where we start talking about, maybe you don't like the book so much, but on Toasting the Classics, you also have to reckon with the importance of the thing.
Right.
And
legacy.
Is that the book or is that the actual thing that happened? Kind of hard to separate because The book made it influential.
I would argue that it's what happened, not really the book. The book draws it all together, though, you know, which is great. So you've got the Beatnik Hippie Bridge. So by the way, it's the
Rolling Stones and the Beatles show up for a few minutes.
You and I, didn't we do Sgt. Pepper? Okay, that was. Do you remember what year that was?
67.
Good.
Right.
So that was the Summer of Love.
Yeah.
That was.
When we did that, we learned that my whole life I thought the Summer of Love was 1969. I thought it was a dirty joke my whole life. You were like it's 67. I was like, it was. What's funny about that?
Too much Bryan Adams.
Yeah.
This happened like 64, 65, so predated that. But Magical Mystery Tour for the Beatles was like 68, 60, something like that, right?
It's tough. It's tough for me to. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Do you know when the end of the hippie movement was?
It's usually the Manson murders
so
are like
69.
the moment when things changed.
So 1969. Okay. This up until 69 was, I think, a huge influence, but I don't know if anybody understood why. Another connection he had was the Grateful Dead, like you said. Right?
Yep, definitely.
So there was one of the members of the Grateful Dead, one of the founders, Owsley.
Is in the Grateful Dead?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I knew Owsley comes up. I thought he was known for like inventing acid, pretty much.
Yeah,
like he was involved.
but they talk about it.
I did not know that.
He
Okay,
invented he founded the Grateful Dead.
All right.
So you've got Owsley there. So Owsley, ladies and gentlemen, was credited with making the best acid. He was the son of actually wealthy people. A very smart kid, but dropped out of a bunch of colleges and got into chemistry outside of college. Found out about acid. Found out how to make acid, and then reportedly made like some of the best acid there was, right?
Sorry, Walter White.
Well, even better because he sets up shop in Los Angeles. Acid is legal at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So he's selling pills, these acid pills.
Okay.
For $1 a pill.
That's how dumb I am about it. I don't even know how you take acid. I thought it was like a sticker that you lick.
I think that's what came. I don't know.
Isn't that what they used to try to scare us about when I was a kid? Was that stickers?
They would coat it inside these little pills.
Tabs of acid.
Tabs.
Is what
But inside these pills, they called them acid gas. Remember, because there's nothing in them.
Okay.
But what it is the inside of the pill is coated with the acid. Okay.
Okay.
So.
But it is something that's just on the surface of something.
Correct.
You can,
correct. It's not like a solid thing. And so he was making these things, and apparently everybody loved his stuff. And he was selling them for $1 a pill. Wolfe makes a point to say he sold 1.5 million of these pills.
Wow.
In 1 year.
I think it said he had put down 20,000 to do the operation.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good profit.
Yes.
Drug dealing.
Well, no, that was
drug dealing
that
usually is if you make the drugs.
So he spent it said he spent $20,000 on, because there's this one particular ingredient that I can't remember what it is off the top of my head that Wolfe talks about.
Okay.
And he spent $20,000. It was like this industrial chemical company. He had spent $20,000 on these chemicals shipped to his place in L.A. And then he spent like another $30,000 to buy them from another place, right? So like $50,000 of these chemicals. These are like the main chemicals.
Yeah.
$50,000 for 1.5 million.
That's pretty good.
And then he decided he was going to found the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
So
that's a nice life.
Not
Make
bad.
a bunch of money and then
Not
spend a bunch of time.
man.
I went to see the Grateful Dead one time. I went to visit my friends in Colorado, and they were like, "We're going to a Grateful Dead show." I was like, "All right, I've never done that. Let's do it." But I went, and it's apparently the version where John Mayer is in the Grateful Dead.
Oh Lord!
So, we were walking up, and my friend tells us that John Mayer's in the band, and his wife and I are laughing. We started singing "My Body Is a Wonderland." We're like, "Are they going to play that?" Like,
my body is a silver lining. Wait, what? Or gray cloud, or whatever. How's it go?
Touch of Grey?
Touch of Grey, yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't know anything about the Grateful Dead except Jerry Garcia's existence.
I know Cherry Garcia.
Yeah, my dad
well.
would always talk about the ice cream Cherry Garcia and how funny that name was. And I was like, I guess, why?
Well, it's because they're friends.
But then when I was much older, I was like, oh, Jerry Garcia.
Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, Jerry, there you go.
Hippie weirdos. Okay.
Yeah, there's also Fish Food. And One Sweet World is the Dave Matthews. And
so they're all jam band?
They're all jam bands,
yeah,
yes, exactly.
Jam.
Oh, one influential bus, or one influence of the bus that I wanted to mention. I went to go see the Total Eclipse last week. So we drove up to upstate New York.
Yeah.
And as we got close to the totality zone, starts to be a pretty good amount of traffic.
Was it life-changing?
It was pretty cool. It was pretty. I would say it's worth doing once in your
life. Feel
life.
the vibrations?
It's really cool because if you're in the totality, It does get darker than it gets otherwise, but it's really cool because you can look straight at it when it's covered, so you can actually see it with your own eyes, which is pretty cool.
You can look straight at darkness. That's really cool. That's great.
No. It doesn't look like darkness. It's a big black circle,
a ring of fire,
and you can see the corona of the sun all around it, and it also formed these like.
I think your soul changed.
It wasn't.
I think your vibration.
I could see why somebody would have that reaction, but I was just on the way there. We get into this traffic jam, and I'm like, okay, it's a lot of people going to see the eclipse. Turns out, it's not being caused by people going to the eclipse. We come over a hill, and there's this gigantic bus covered with like totems and bumper stickers and things. It's huge, and it's got like stuffed animals falling off it onto the highway, and everybody's slowing down to look at them and go around. And pretty sure those people were influenced. Yeah, also by Ken Kesey et al., the Merry Pranksters. So
I will say, so Kesey, there's a couple of things here. So Kesey apparently was huge. He was a wrestler,
like physically.
Yeah.
I know he's really strong.
Yeah, he was a wrestler. He wrestled in the 174. With the wrestlers, they get down to 174. So their walking weight's probably 185, 195, something like that. Big dude.
So you're talking about a guy like my size, but who's gotten himself down to 174 maybe.
Yeah.
That would
because he always talked about like his big bulging muscles.
Yeah.
Cassidy was exactly the same way. Cassidy was like one of those natural. He was like an Adonis type of guy that just he never. I mean, all he did was ruin his body.
Yep.
But you see this guy, and there's plenty of pictures out there. You see this guy without a shirt on, and he's like freaking just jacked, right?
Yeah.
And all he did was take drugs.
I don't know. It doesn't make any. Well, sometimes
these people are touched by God. Like there are those people out there.
I used to see people. You see a guy walking down the street like a homeless person, shirtless, and he's just ripped.
You're like,
and
what?
I'm like, what are you doing?
Why? How is this
fair? If
fair?
I don't exercise for 3 days,
that's the thing. Is like, how is this fair?
Yeah. Well, his life's not great.
Okay, so people. Here's the thing. People talk about
balances out.
People talk about no, it doesn't balance out. Not at all. People talk about like they're looking for like this whole genome splicing type of thing where you can actually become a woman. You know, like a man can become a woman through this genes, like an adult person. Okay, I want it to
become that.
Yeah, and I want to take it away from them. Yeah, I want to take somebody. Okay, no, here's the thing. I want to take somebody who treats themselves like crud,
turn them into a fat slob.
Yes, and turn me into because it's
When I said fair, when I said fair, I meant that guy's life is a shambles otherwise. So I think I'd still rather be me. I wouldn't trade it.
No, I mean,
I don't know if you could be ripped though. Maybe it'd be okay.
Yeah,
to be on
he's got a place to live.
Yeah,
which is everything.
Everywhere.
All of the public places in the world.
Yep. You know what? We were talking about things that probably need to be cut from the podcast. Okay. But so I'm going to mention this. He constantly, Wolfe, this is his own words, refers to black people as spades.
Spades.
It is. What are you doing, man? Yeah. Why are you saying that?
Well,
is that not as hateful as I think it is?
And he said,
Negroes, I understand it's a long time ago, but why in the hell are you saying?
But he says that as part of an in-group, though.
Yeah, he's talking about the hippies that hang around. He's talking about the black people that hang out with them.
Yeah, he's talking about that's part of our group, and they are called this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Is it like a cool hip thing at the time?
I don't know.
We should probably.
It sounds terrible, and I really wish he didn't say it.
It really does sound terrible.
And there's a really weird sequence, actually. I don't know. I mean, race is not a big part of this book, but it's in there. But there's this bit where they go to a segregated beach. Yeah. They accidentally go to the black section of the segregated beach in Louisiana. Right. And the weird thing is the black people are mad that they violated the segregation. And I was like, I never thought of that. Maybe there'd be people that would see things that way. They're like, no, this is the beach for us, and that's the beach for you.
Well, especially in a society where they've been shunned from everything else. Right, so it's like, this is our place.
Yeah, exactly. Sure, yeah, this is our. Yeah. I don't know. That was an interesting episode there. I thought it's super cool how much he talks about Marvel comics.
Yeah,
well, this is very early.
So
this is like breaking Marvel comics.
I think Kesey. I think that's a Kesey thing.
Maybe.
I think he was trying to set Kesey up as innocent and sort of naive.
Doctor Strange is a big thing in the counterculture. I knew that, but they're talking about everybody. They're talking about
Marvel. I mean,
Thor, Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man. Everybody gets a mention.
And we're going to be superheroes type of thing, right?
Yep. But I could imagine. Like I said, I don't know much about acid, but I imagine you could look at some Marvel comics and pour over them for hours while on psychedelics. So I brought up Robert Heinlein and Larry McMurtry, and you said you wanted to talk.
Okay, so Robert Heinlein, like grok is the word that he uses.
Yeah, totally.
Throughout.
My whole life, people have always said that the word grok was used by people because of the book Stranger in a Strange Land.
Right.
And I was like, I've never heard anybody say grok. And it must be just this culture that used the word.
Okay.
Nobody says grok.
Nobody says grok?
Do you ever say grok?
Do you know what Elon Musk calls his artificial intelligence?
No. Grok?
Grok.
Okay. Yeah, but see, that'd be the kind of person that would be into Robert Heinlein, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you
In
look up
every way, by the way.
if you look up grok, it means to think, to share knowledge.
Doesn't he do acid?
Elon?
Doesn't he
I have no
microdose
idea.
acid? Isn't that like a big thing?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about him. I just know that if you go on X, there's a tab that says grok. And you
Okay,
select that.
all
It's
right.
kind of like Chat GPT where you can it has a prompt on it so you can ask questions and stuff.
It's like if you read books about World War II, they often mention that the guy that betrayed the Norwegian government to the Nazis, Otto Quisling, became a word for a traitor.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, I've read that fact 50 times. I've never heard anybody use the word Quisling ever.
Right,
But,
right, yeah.
You know.
Quisling sounds like a junior quiz.
I read Stranger in a Strange Land, and it's
Yeah.
definitely, it's really interesting how it dovetails with this because
Yeah.
it really is. It's about an alien who becomes like a cult leader
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
puts together this hippie movement. And that
Yeah.
book completely lost me. That was not my favorite Robert Heinlein
Me neither
book.
at all.
And
Yeah.
it's super long. So we're going to be reading that next. No, just kidding. No, it's not.
It's annoying. It's an annoying.
It's an
book.
annoying book.
Yeah, it
I didn't
is.
like it at all. I love some of his other stuff. His shorter, pithier stuff, like Starship Troopers.
Starship
I really
Troopers,
enjoy.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
and a
that's-
couple of other,
yeah.
a couple of other small ones.
Okay, and so Larry McMurtry was a good friend of Kesey, apparently.
Apparently,
I guess they both went to the same creative writing fellowship at Stanford or something like that.
I noticed that late in the research that he I would have thought Ken Kesey got his start as like a guerrilla, journalist. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like no, he did like a fellowship in creative writing
Yeah.
at Stanford. I'm
Well,
like,
he
that
was
is the least punk rock way I've ever heard of becoming
I
a
know,
writer.
I know. Yeah, exactly. But McMurtry.
Yeah,
So if you're not familiar with him, he wrote
I read Lonesome Dove.
Lonesome Dove was
Very good
his
book.
most famous Pulitzer Prize winning, I believe.
Maybe. Great book,
But
though.
also Last Picture Show, which is a fantastic book.
I saw the movie.
And with the movie.
Okay, I didn't know that was McMurtry
yeah.
actually.
So quite a few of them, and it's it all takes place in Texas, and he was born in Texas, moved out to California, moved back to Texas, but there's a part in here he features in it. He's one of the stops on the way. They stop in Houston and stop at his house, and one of the girls there has a psychotic break or something like that,
Yep.
and goes to jail or whatever. She's off the bus, but that really surprised me. That was one of my biggest surprises. Was
are we doing biggest surprise?
No.
No, okay.
I'm just because you brought it up. Now I have to say it.
Oh,
It was
I ruined
it
your
was,
big. My bad.
It was a huge
All right.
surprise because McMurtry is a squarest guy. Like if you read his books, you would
just
never
being an author of Western novels,
you would never
wouldn't-
think of him as.
No.
But it
No.
makes sense.
Robert Heinlein.
But it
you
makes
wouldn't
sense
think
that,
of
that look, the Last Picture Show or Lonesome Dove. The reason they were so good was because he wasn't Zane Grey, or he wasn't. It wasn't.
In what way?
He was deeper, more critical. Like it had.
I think there's more interpretive value.
Yeah,
To his
perhaps.
work, like
Yeah.
there's allusions to other things.
Although one of Kesey's favorite authors was Zane Grey.
he talked about Zane Grey. I remember.
Right,
I think he named his kid Zane.
Yeah,
or something
in
like
fact,
that. Yeah.
So
he was definitely a fan. Zane Grey's fine. I've read several of his books. He's fun to read.
I'm just saying, there's not a.
But
deep,
he's
there's,
like
there's
he's
not
like,
a deeper level to
no,
it.
it's like it's maybe not even the highbrow, maybe like middlebrow, like Stephen King. It's good.
I would say
it's good pulp writing.
Louis
but it's-
L'Amour. Louis L'Amour. It's
Louis
like,
L'Amour
it's
is
like,
actually who I was thinking
it's
of.
like serial type of
I've
stuff.
read
yeah.
a bunch of Louis L'Amour. I read one book by Zane Grey.
Yeah.
So never
Zane
mind.
Grey's like-
I'm just thinking of the wrong author.
Like twice the content. Like Louis L'Amour is like 150 pages.
Yeah, those are
Zane Grey's
breezy.
like 300,
Right.
350.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
bit
I
deeper.
think if I remember Riders of the Purple Sage right, it was closer to the level of Lonesome Dove. It's a pretty quality.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he's a pretty good writer. Louis L'Amour is too, but just in a different way. He's pulpier.
Right, pulpier, exactly. So that was a big surprise for me.
I've talked about some of my big surprises. Encountering Neil Cassidy again was a surprise, but not just like they met. Like they talk about Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah.
Allen Ginsberg it's like a, what do you call it, a roman à clé, where he just kind of walks through
Yeah,
the book
yeah.
at
He
one
kind of
point.
walks through just stuff here.
But
and there.
Cassidy is actually in it.
He's a character.
And he's being characterized as Neil
Yeah.
Cassidy. You can recognize that's the same guy.
He's always on speed.
Driving the bus really fast down the mountain
He's always
and
on
almost
speed.
killing everybody.
He's always like flipping a sledgehammer through the
throwing
whole
a
thing.
sledgehammer
Yeah.
at people. Yeah, exactly. There's a part where they're talking about how you can always count on Neil Cassidy.
Yeah.
He's the reliable one.
Yeah.
He can fix the van.
Which is funny,
He can
right.
fix the bus. He can drive
But
the bus.
see, again, so every scene that he's in,
Mm-hmm.
he's like jerking from here to there. His limbs are all jerking because he's like on speed and stuff. So he's like tweaking.
I mean,
And-
honestly, the physique is probably partially from amphetamines.
Yeah, probably. Well, it could be. Yeah,
You know, I mean, if you think
yeah,
about it, like you
tightening
get
up.
yourself big and
yeah.
jacked, and you just don't have any fat because your body's always
True. But he's like
vibrating.
flipping up a sledgehammer all the time and catching it, and talking really fast and everything else. But see, Wolfe was getting all this secondhand.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cassidy would come in, and this is how would he be.
Yeah.
And so Wolfe was
So
like,
maybe it's not so strange that he sounds like the Neil Cassidy from On the Road because he's just
Maybe, I don't
copying
know.
what was in On the Road.
Yeah, maybe.
Because a lot of this feels like On the Road.
Some of it does.
Different writing style.
Some of it does.
But-
I feel like his writing style, he like,
There's a really strange punctuation mark he uses. It's like a box of dots.
yes.
I don't know what it's called, and I don't know what it
It's
means.
not ellipses. I don't know what it is.
It's not ellipses.
Yeah.
It's like a cluster of dots in a box.
It almost felt like he was trying to do something different. Like,
Exactly.
what can I do
Exactly.
different?
It seemed to me like
So Hunter
look at what I can do.
Hunter S.
like
Thompson.
as a writer.
Okay, so the famous story with Hunter S. Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
He was sent to the Kentucky Derby
Right.
to do a story in the Kentucky Derby. He got blasted the
Right,
entire weekend. And
Perfectly normal, perfectly
right.
healthy.
And like his deadline was coming up, so all he did was send his notes. And his notes were like all over the place.
Yeah, that's
all
right.
And so they
And
just
that-
published his notes.
Right.
And they said
thought he did it on purpose.
Yeah, they're like, that's brilliant. That's gonzo journalism.
Yeah,
Stream of
exactly.
consciousness, all this other stuff. He's like, okay. So from now on, I'm just going to do drugs and not do exactly what I'm supposed to do.
I mean, I don't
But
have.
Wolfe
Wolfe is
set out.
Wolfe
he-
is a good writer.
He set out to do that.
Yeah, Wolfe is a good writer. I don't
So-
think his experiment here works for me.
Yeah, me
with the
neither.
prose he's using, but he's a great writer.
But see, he doesn't. For me, I mean, he doesn't do that in The Right Stuff.
Not at all.
He doesn't do
Not
that
at all.
Bonfire of the Vanities.
He takes a whole bunch of historical events, breathes life into them, and then comes up with this terrific theme about
Yes.
America that
Yeah.
he puts into The Right Stuff. It's a great book. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of writing.
Right.
It's almost a nonfiction book, but not really. It's
Right.
it's a story. It's a historical fiction, I guess.
Yeah, narrative nonfiction.
There's a weird bit in Bonfire of the Vanities where one of the main characters is a policeman. No, sorry, he's not. He's an attorney, but he's a prosecutor, and he's constantly talking about his impressive sternocleidomastoid muscles or whatever. He keeps using that phrase. He used it in this book.
Is that?
What is?
Yes.
He mentions it here with somebody. I think he's talking about Kesey and describes him as having these amazing sternocleidomastoid muscles.
Jaw muscles, basically.
I thought it was no.
Was it?
Is that? I thought it
Oh,
was sternum,
Yeah,
like
sternum,
across.
yeah, sternum, yeah.
I think it's like the
Pecs?
upper chest.
Pecs, maybe?
Pecs is the normal word
yeah.
a person would use. I don't know where you come up with sternocleido,
Yeah.
whatever. But
Wolfe
it was a weird phrase.
So
that-
Wolfe. So I did a dive on Wolfe. Some oddities, like he always wore a white suit. That was his thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of strange,
That
right?
sounds kind of Truman Capote. Sort
Exactly.
Of thing to do,
That's
yeah.
exactly what I thought of.
They're similar writers, aren't they? Because they're both
Exactly.
sort of
yes.
literary
So
journalism.
Capote checked out before Wolfe. I don't know if
Checked out, like died.
before I think.
Is Wolfe dead?
Oh yeah, Wolfe passed
But not long ago, right?
10, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I want to say 2000s maybe. Wolfe was a conservative. So he liked
Okay.
because he liked Donald Trump. Like in the 2016 election, he was like, yeah, Donald Trump's a good guy.
Well, maybe he was just getting old. And well, he hasn't been dead for 15 years if he was voting for Trump.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
No,
No, that's probably just as you get older, you have brain lesions and things.
and so you vote for Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
50% of the country votes for Trump
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
brain lesions.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
why not? It's kind of funny. Like Hunter S. Thompson,
Hmm.
is he a liberal or a conservative?
I don't know.
Right, I don't
There's
know.
a
either.
libertarian streak. I don't know.
Right, yeah, I don't know. He was into guns.
For me, learning about Hunter S. Thompson, and I had read some of his later
Yeah.
work, and we
Uh-huh.
read
Yeah.
Fear and Loathing. The veil was pierced for me about Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that? Like his sort of persona that people love. I kind of saw through it, and I didn't
Yeah.
buy it anymore, and so he lost me.
Okay.
Like I kind of wasn't that into the persona
Okay.
once I could see the man behind the
Yeah.
screen, like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It just
That's a good
ruined
point.
it for me.
I only bring it up because like Herbert Humphreys, he was all about him, right? Hated Nixon, blah blah blah.
Okay.
But then he was like individually, he was for many of these causes that you would say were right wing, like he was anti-gun control, he was pro-gun, all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Wolfe was sort of like that.
Well, you could be consistently about civil liberties, and you could want to have guns because you have the right to have guns.
Yeah.
You know? I mean,
Right.
that's one of those things I don't see why it has to fit on the spectrum.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
You know.
All right, so
So the other connection I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
a little bit, and I mentioned it in passing, is Jim Jones.
okay,
I think it's crazy how
Kool-Aid?
you're reading about this, and it's not just the Kool-Aid, but it's the cult, right?
Yeah.
This Ken Kesey's got a cult. Like now he moves away from it before it ever really goes super dark, I think. But he very much has cult-like control over these people.
Yeah.
And he has this organization running. And then Jim Jones is in the scene. Jim Jones is in San Francisco at this time doing his early versions of his church. Yeah, and he was in San Francisco at the time. And then the Kool-Aid thing. Yeah. That's such a weird connection.
So Jonestown happened, it was like 74?
Jonestown went down in about 74, yeah. I don't know the exact year, but it's
it was
into the
French
70s.
Guyana, I think,
It's Guyana, the regular Guyana.
Or Guyana, okay, yeah.
I think I read one time that it's not cool. They didn't drink Kool-Aid. That it's some other fruit drink. Some other brand of fruit drink, but everybody calls it Kool-Aid, and I'm guessing it's because there's a connection between Kool-Aid acid test and this. I don't know. It might be. But drinking the Kool-Aid has become an expression.
I know. Okay, so this is the other connection I wanted to make. Okay, you ready for this?
Sure.
Guess who was in charge of those tests, the original acid tests with Kesey in the mental?
Who was in charge? So it's not Leary. We talked about this. And it's not the other guy, Altman or Alpert?
Nope.
Oh.
So he was being paid. Remember, he was a intern at a mental institute at night.
And this is in California.
Yeah, California. Okay. He was approached and asked, hey, do you want to do this, be part of this drug test thing by another guy who's doing it? And they'll pay you a lot of money. And it's these researchers from Stanford or Berkeley. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
Guess who that was?
I don't think I have it. No, who is it?
You ever heard of MK Ultra?
No. You mean the British Secret Intelligence thing?
No.
Ultra? No. Ultra is the code name.
So the CIA.
Okay. That's
60s,
what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
okay.
In the 60s. Yeah. In the 60s, ran this.
I'm mixing up Ultra and Enigma, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the 1960s, the CIA ran and funded tests of acid on people.
Yeah.
So they had this one thing called Midnight Climax.
Okay.
So what they would do is they would get in. It was all in San Francisco for some reason. All took place there. So Operation Midnight Climax was they would get this brothel.
Oh, I've heard these stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they would have a two-way.
I don't remember them in detail.
They would have a two-way mirror.
Yeah. Right.
You know, the Johns would go up to the prostitute's room, and the prostitute would spike a drink with acid.
Yeah, I heard about this.
John would drink it, and then they'd sit there and watch and take notes about. And that's called Operation Midnight Climax.
Demented.
But this is all real, man.
I know it is. I know. I've heard this story before.
All declassified stuff. It's real. So MK Ultra.
You know, not only
were acid
it wasn't
tests.
just the left that was getting more creative in the 60s. Apparently, the squares were also.
I don't know what you call these people, man. I don't know. I think when it comes to the 60s, the left, right, all this stuff, that's all out the window. It was weird.
It was a weird time, and I think people talk about today is so crazy. Today's crazier than like most of our lives.
I guess,
but it's not as crazy as the 60s.
So one of the points is the CIA ran a clinic on Haight-Ashbury that would give people acid.
Okay.
And one of their supposed subjects was, guess who?
Ken Kesey?
No.
Oh.
Manson.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there. You know else who was involved in well,
one of the people
MK
on the
Ultra?
bus was talking about hang-ups at one point, and I was thinking that's a Manson phrase.
Yes.
They used to say that
Well,
all
there's
the
this
time.
whole hypnotic thing, right? That Manson was had this hypnotic thing.
Yeah, and the connection to the Beatles.
Right. There's all kinds of stuff.
There's a connection there.
And another guy that had a connection that actually was involved in the MK Ultra experiment. What's that nutbag's name that lived in the woods and sent letter bombs to judges?
Oh, the Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski.
Ted Kaczynski. He was part of the MK Ultra experiments too.
Well, that did a lot of damage, apparently.
They gave him acid in college, and pretty crazy. Okay.
What was your biggest surprise? Did you land on?
Man, I had a lot.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I had a lot. Larry McMurtry was a big one because I didn't expect
Robert Heinlein's probably mine. Yeah.
Heinlein I can kind of get.
Acid not being illegal right away is pretty close to being a big surprise. Although if I think about it, it makes sense because it was new, so they didn't know.
Yeah.
But that is pretty surprising.
For me, Larry McMurtry was being. So this guy is kind of a revered Western writer, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And he's best friends with the guy that started the acid movement.
Yeah. Well, they're writers. They're creative people, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, you and I know some people that are pretty different than us. Like, I don't know if we can. You are a creative person. I don't know if I've ever been recognized as a creative person, but I've known some people that are pretty different than me throughout my life. So,
do we know anybody different than us?
Yeah, we definitely. Yeah.
Surprisingly, look like. Because never mind.
There's the Venn diagram there has an intersection. Let's just
anyway.
There was one thing I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
and it was more of a discussion topic, so it's not great for the end. But I wanted to say, does Tom Wolfe like these people? What is his opinion of the married pranksters?
That's a good question. Man, that is a good question. I don't think he does.
Because I don't think he does.
I don't think he does.
I think they're coming across negatively. And I think he especially is skeptical about Kesey's leadership.
Here's how I feel reading it, and that's all you can do is like intuit.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
I feel like he's trying to give him a fair shake.
Okay.
But I feel like Wolfe is a conservative. He is.
Is he giving does he really talk about why they're doing it? I think he just makes them sound like dissolute the whole time. They're just people that like to get high. He never talks about why they joined this movement or like Mountain Girl ran away from home. Why? Why doesn't he try to tell us about that?
He talks about it in their terms, like just what they say.
Just what they say, right? Yeah, but
he never digs further than that. Like I don't think he doesn't agree with them. I think he is a bit of a square. I think he would be a square.
Yeah,
and that might be why he is doing the gonzo journalism because it compensates for that, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Especially in the circles that he runs in, because Wolfe runs in the Manhattan kind of crowd. I think he's. I
wish I knew what periodical he wrote for.
I swear it's like the New York Magazine.
Is it the Atlantic or something like that?
No, it's like the New York Magazine.
Okay.
Which was huge back in the in the day, like New Yorker now, but back then the New York. I think it was called the New York Magazine, wasn't it?
I think there's a thing called that. Yeah.
And it was a big deal, and I think he was writing for that at the time, and I think. I don't think he's with these people. He's not on the bus.
No, I don't think he's on the bus. He's not in the movie. He's not on the bus.
I think he's tolerant. Not tolerant, but tolerant's a good word. Like they tweak and they freak out and they do whatever, and he's like, okay, that's cool. He doesn't get offended and leave. Like, oh, I can't have any of this.
Well, he's a fairly young man at the time too, right? Like he is.
Yeah,
he's a part of all of
it.
Yeah, so.
He's probably in his 30s, but I mean, and I think he's creative enough. I mean, the guy's obviously a very bright, creative mind.
Yeah.
So he can kind of get that, but he's not with these people. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think so.
He never did acid himself.
I think he manages to portray them pretty negatively without ever coming out and saying it. I don't think they come out particularly heroically. They seem kind of like buffoons a little bit.
Kesey really doesn't.
Kesey's a much more interesting figure.
So how does Kesey come out at the end? Before we end this, we should end soon.
He's a little bit of a buffoon, but not so much. I mean, definitely the power of his personality comes across. He's very impressed with Ken Kesey, I think, in a lot of ways, but also kind of thinks that the whole movement gets the better of him at the end, I think.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
I think he seems to think of Kesey as a powerful figure, but also tragically, there's a tragic downfall here. And he doesn't say it, but I think this is sort of an anti-drug type of book. And I think he paints Kesey as
the drugs are really at the center of it in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
I thought the drugs would be incidental to the
and he sort of says this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
If you follow his path.
Right.
Look what happened to him.
Yeah, I don't get the impression this is something people should do all the time.
The fugitive stuff, it's not romantic. It's a downer.
It just makes him look like an idiot.
Yeah, everything's a downer and everything's terrible and they're living in terrible conditions. Nothing's romantic about the outcome of you doing this, right?
Yeah. No.
And so
you end up down in Mexico on a beach that's covered in red tide.
Right.
That's what happens to you, So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, I think he kind of looks down on them and is sort of judgmental.
I think he's kind of
I didn't really think of him as being conservative, but that makes sense. That would make sense if that was his perspective. I don't know if he's conservative or conservative the way people always accuse me of being conservative.
He liked Reagan.
That's pretty conservative, yeah.
He liked Trump.
That's pretty.
Okay.
That's something else.
I don't know. Trump's different. Yeah, okay. He liked Reagan. Let's say he liked Reagan.
So ending up voting for Trump is something conservatives did. if you know what I mean. I know a lot of people who are lifelong Republicans, lifelong conservatives, that ended up voting for Trump.
I know a lot of people that just wanted to burn everything down.
People
so they
that
voted
like
for
Trump is a different basket. That is a different basket of
people. He's not in that basket.
Yeah,
I think he
there's people that made a concession to the lesser of two evils and voted for him, but that's not the same person.
Right.
I've been through a whole journey with trying to understand my friends that I knew were good people that ended up voting for Trump, and I do understand what happened in some ways.
Well,
but
certain people went beyond.
Some people went.
They opened doors.
If you were, let's say, drinking the Kool-Aid,
yes,
when Trump became president, then that's a whole different ballgame. But anyway, I think we're all done. Let's go ahead and let's do our vote. And I think this is going to be an interesting one because
it's all me.
My vote doesn't really count.
No, it doesn't.
But as a classic, it's tough because I think this is Tom Wolfe's first book.
Yeah,
his first big thing.
I think so.
That's worth something because I think he's a great writer. He's a great American voice. I would probably end up voting for it despite not having enjoyed the read very much.
Yeah,
because it was the prose I didn't like. It wasn't anything else about it.
I think I would too. But
okay.
I mean, he was sort of the catalyst for the Gonzo stuff, right?
Does he gets more credit for it than Hunter S. Thompson?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
he's earlier.
Well, he's a predecessor.
Yeah.
Hunter S. Thompson, I think, is more authentic. Like Hunter S. Thompson, like the Gonzo was like because he was stoned out.
Because he was
gourd.
gone.
Yeah. So he was Gonzo, and he wrote this stuff. But Tom Wolfe allowed that to happen.
Another connection to the Muppets there.
Yeah, right. Gonzo. Yeah, he allowed that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will toast this because just
cheers,
man. So many.
Do you have any nasty fruit punch concoction?
I
left?
do.
Cheers.
Cheers, clink clink.
The danger, in my experience of drinking something like Kool-Aid or fruit punch mixed with vodka, is that it sneaks up on you.
Yes, it does.
You can get it into the second glass thinking it's not hitting you, and then that first bit starts to hit you, and you're like, oh no.
Oh geez.
I need to give people my keys. Right. I need to write a will. Like this is going to be a long night.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been just a slice of heaven.
Absolutely. I love doing this here in person. I wish we could do this.
I wish he was back.
If the podcast, I'm gonna make this request to everybody. If the podcast starts making money, I will fly out here and record.
How does a podcast start
making
money?
I don't know. Who knows? That's why it's not making because I have no clue. But if it were making money, I would fly out here, deduct the flight from my expenses,
that'd be fun.
and do a couple. I would love to
amazing,
do that. That would be great. I would do that a couple times a year if we were actually earning something. That should be the goal. Let's make that the goal.
What's that?
Let's make the goal of the podcast profitability to the level that it's not ridiculous for me to fly out here and record a couple of episodes with you.
Yeah,
just to pay for that.
Yeah.
It'd be $300 or $400 for me to fly out here. I think we could do that. I
am down.
All right, so this is Dave McArthur signing off for Toasting the Classic.
And this is Dr. Professor Clint Lanier.
Lord, it's like talking to some medieval Spanish noble. I am San Juan de Castile de Antonio Nebrija.
There's a SpongeBob episode. If anybody watches SpongeBob, they'll get that. Dr. Professor Patrick, I think.
Oh, okay.
There's Dr. Professor Clint Lanier.
Everybody, peace out.
And thank you, as always. Please share and do all that stuff.
If you're listening to the podcast, you are on the bus.
You are on the bus. Bye.
That's it for episode 97 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, get some whiskey as we follow the Marines to the sands of Iwo Jima. If you need to know what kind of whiskey, then you're too soft for the Duke. If you'd like to get in touch, please send us an email at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, and let us know which animated characters are on your acid tabs. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.